So I'm going to do a quick little lighting demo for like if you have multiple light sources, particularly if you have string lights at the top. I'm going to start in grayscale just because sometimes it's easier to start when you can see the value. So the string lights, I've got them loosely drawn in pencil. Everything else I've got inked in. One of the reasons I've done this is you don't want hard lines around those like white glows. We're going to want to make sure that we have some kind of value, some kind of tone on everything that isn't the direct light source. So the top of the lamp, each of the little individual bulbs and the string lights. By making everything else have a bit of volume or value and tone, it's making those seem brighter. So that's why we're outlining them. That's why we're going through and just going crazy with this one of our lightest grays to begin with. I'm going to slowly work my way up onto some of these shadows. In this version, the string lights are sort of hanging beneath a little piece of trim on the wall, which is casting some shadows above it and before it hits that corner of the ceiling, right? So each individual little light bulb on the string lights makes a little circle or an oval of light. Depending on the angle, it might have a hotter center and then sort of like an oval that's a little softer, or it might have like a perfect circle. Depends on how it's sitting on the wall. So you can see, even just by building these up, we don't have a lot of contrast yet. We're still working in pretty light shades, but you can really start to see how the light is affecting the room already. Go ahead and really darken up a couple shadows so that I can see the full range of values that we're going to be headed towards. Know that I need to create balance from that. Keep darkening above that trim. Since they're hanging right below it, it's always going to catch on that edge and make a little shadow, but not a very dark or not a very wide cast shadow, just a little line. So I'm using the bullet part of my marker. So because we have multiple light sources, we have these string lights that give a soft glow coming from up along the walls from up above. And then we have this lamp that's doing a directional glow up and down in a widening kind of cone shape. So we need to think about how that would react to things that are in the room. So we have the edge of the desk there, which is going to be a brighter light. And then the edge and the top of the bed that's sitting there is going to also have a little bit of a glow to it, but it's not as close, so it won't be as hot as the desk right underneath the lamp, right? Also, string lights aren't like a directional light. After they leave that like initial little sphere, they're going to be more of like an ambient glow. They're not as strong, so it wouldn't be making the whole bed like white. So now I'm going to start using my Color Splendor with a touch of yellow on it to add some warmth around each of these string lights and start really tracking where the light is by where I put this yellow. So not only are we operating in value, but we're also operating color temperature for the light. So the string lights have a very nice golden yellow glow to them, but we're leaving the centers bright white. And then the lamp has a bit of a glow to it along those edges of both where it casts and in the lampshade. And then like we talked about, there's like a soft glow onto the bed. I'm using my Color Splendor directly. I'm like wiping it against the yellow marker to pick up some color so that I have a little bit more control over the density of it. I'll go through with the yellow marker on its own and add some brighter pops here in just a second. So I'm going to go back. These are cool grays. So before I was working kind of warm grays, I'd like to make my shadows have a cooler tone to them to help bounce the light, like bring it even more into the foreground and make the contrast between shadow and light even stronger. So this is a very light, cool gray. I'm going to use some actual blues to start really adding value and also changing the color temperature here. theoretically the walls in this room are like cream, so nice thing about white walls is they do take color, temperature, and ambient like light very nicely, so you can really push those cooler shadows, you can have those warmer lights, and it will react well with both. If you have a colored wall, you have to think about how the warmth of the light, that color would change the color of the wall. So if it's like a purple wall, maybe it goes a little pinkier instead of bright yellow and then heads into like a warmer glow versus going straight into yellow. But with a white wall or a gray wall or something a little more neutral, we can kind of estimate it better. I am going to bring some of those pinks in to help me blend my yellows and also to add some more modeling and ambient to the walls, ambient light. You also see the difference. These bigger bullet markers I'm using have a brush tip. They're a lot easier to get kind of painterly effects with. I'm a lot looser with them. My grayscales all have chisel tips, so I prefer the brush tips, but you can certainly do it all with a chisel tip. But I'm doing a little bit more of like a painterly, I'm allowing some streaks to show through. I know I'm gonna do lots of layers on it, so I'm not as worried right now about blending it perfectly as I am about just getting the colors and the values where I want them. We can kind of worry about them slowly blending in more as we go. I'm using this purple as sort of my midway between cool and warm. It's a bit of a lilac mauve color, so it kind of sits nicely with that pinkish yellow we were using in the light, and it also blends nicely into the blue, so it's sort of a good color to marry between the two areas. Also starting to reach a pretty good level of saturation in my paper where it's going to start, like after enough layers of marker, it starts blending easier and faster. So this is that cool gray again, and I'm going through and just toning and using that since it's a low percentage to blend my blues, my purples, and make them all sit together a little bit better. And to really finesse our levels, make sure that everything has its own space, has its own sense of lighting. I'm going to use a micron to go ahead and draw in the cord in between the lights and the little bases of each individual string bulb on the string, whatever. That sense of contrast between the bright white and that dark cord helps me kind of sell it. I'm also going to use a pencil to do a light pattern on the lampshade, and then remember that I need to actually color the lamp base and add a little bit of shading to the shade. And a white colored pencil to really make sure that those are really bright and well blended. This is a very, very low percentage kind of warm neutral color, almost like a tan, so I'm using that to really buff out and do some blending. It's a chisel tip, so I've got a lot of pressure I can put in it. A few more micron details to help the line work from the beginning set in, and also to make the balance of like how stark that wire seams feel a little bit more incorporated. I'm going to use my white colored pencil to add the highlight of above each bulb running along that trim, and to also do a little round buffing out to make sure that the white in the center doesn't have any pencil lines in it. It's really nice and bright. So that when we can see the source, it's almost always going to be pure white, or the brightest color that we've got in the scene, right? So even if you have like a blue light, it's going to be the brightest, most like light tone, but also vibrant blue that you've got at the source. It might even still have a white light at the source that's like glows into the blue instead of glowing into a yellow. But if you're seeing the source directly, seeing the bulb directly, you do want to be able to like identify it as the brightest object in the room, so you can see we've brought value to everything else. So those have a strong sense of highlight and brightness to them, and they glow. Hope that helps.